BSO is an infrastructure provider, and we focus at providing the underlying connectivity and any type of infrastructure that supports the mission critical applications of our client. And obviously, the capital markets and the finance is one of the most demanding, technologically advanced industry. And the telecom is at the heart of anything in the middle of trading, whether it's equity, FX, options, futures, any asset class, and of course now cryptocurrencies and crypto assets these days. If anything, BSO has always been a very engineered focused company. So we focused at delivering great products, lots of R&D, lots of engineer developing things in warehouses and labs. But we've been very, very bad at marketing ourselves, at conveying a proper message. And customers were buying us because we had services that were outside of the mainstream products that the rest of the industry was providing to the capital markets. Our knowledge, our technology was the differentiator. And we realized that the capital market was in need of what was so much bigger than just the super core high frequency traders and order execution from the brokers, prime brokers, and tier one banks, and that we needed to spread outside of our comfort zone to keep growing into this vertical, which has still huge potential. And that rebranding was a necessity to reposition all the products that we had, give us a new fresh look, a new fresh identity, bigger firm, new fintech type field that was really needed when you look at our previous branding and previous collaterals, let's say. I think the capital market was already extremely advanced when it comes to technology, allowing business to function remotely from remote offices. When you think about it, every fully integrated trading firm in the world is trading over at least 40 or 50 exchanges in 40 different countries. So people already had the resources and the teams lined up to support infrastructure in all these countries worldwide, globally on a 24/7 basis. What I think the pandemic has done is forced all the much slower players to adapt and adjust to that, and namely the tier one banks, the tier two banks, the more corporate types of capital markets than the HFT firms. And everybody probably started to look quite extensively and heavily at how can we remove our current infrastructure from the office and move them even further into the colos and into the cloud. And that's the thing that's been really popping in the last few months. And we've seen huge demand from the finance to provide them connectivity from the public cloud providers into their existing data centers, namely because they've been trying to push more and more into the cloud to give access to this content and this market data and this historical data from remote locations or from work from home people. So that's the trend we've seen mostly. I think more and more people are saying, let's not waste time in transport. Let's not waste time meeting face to face. Let's just meet face to face when there's something really meaningful that cannot be done over tools. We've been trying to set up face to face meetings with customers and partners since the world started to reopen a little since March or April, and we can see that's been pushed back. Let's put it like that. And people are still asking for, hey, let's make a Zoom, let's make a Google Meet, let's make a Teams. That will be all good for us. And we can see opportunities in business still flowing and developing that way. So I don't think we're going to get back to these constant global travel thing where you are going to an event in Chicago and then the next week to New York and the next week to London and the next week to Paris, the next week to Singapore. I think this is going to slow down and people are going to focus on the main ones, or maybe cherry pick the ones that are really meaningful and save the trips for what really matters, and instead do more and more virtual events and virtual meetings, which is a sad thing because at the end of the day, business is it's human relationship. Most of the deals are done because there's chemistry between people. The products is here, of course, but chemistry works and human relationship works. So I'm eager to see what's going to happen over the long run. I think it's a great idea, to be honest with you, because one thing I'm sure of is that if we could give a bit more dynamic things to these virtual meetings we're having, it's great. But it's probably a long shot before people all have the hardware and the gears to support virtual reality meetings. But it sounds interesting. I was last week at the Miami Bitcoin conference, which was the first real event that happened that was somewhat related to the capital markets. It was great actually to after 2 years of lockdown to be able to engage and create relationship. And there's nothing better than the bubbling of ideas and the meetup of people to get things moving. And but now I can see already so many news in the newspapers saying, oh, the first cases of COVID after the Miami Bitcoin conference is starting to explode. And I was like, okay, so we're certainly not there yet and not outside of the woods yet. So I think there's yeah, it can be the gap of virtual reality could bridge that. And I've seen quite a few projects around virtual reality when it comes to entertainment, with live DJs, live artists performing in a virtual reality world, and people joining here and having the ability to interact with them. So I think the projects that they have, as you just mentioned to me, for business meetings or conferences, probably really good. I'm going to take a look at that. I wasn't aware of it, but I like the idea. We're very much focused at the core of the trading thing. So for us, the technologies that we focus on are really 5 years, 10 years ahead. So it's all around evolution of the RF technology. How can we have more bandwidth available on the long haul microwave or metros, millimeter wave type technologies? Of course, always reduce the latency on that, but integrate further with all the feed handler, market data manipulation, and lower the latency of treatment of all these informations before we push it onto the network. And then, of course, all the new technologies linked to that. So the low Earth orbit satellite, that's definitely something that will crop up in the next few years for training. Clearly, the investment is still really big. You need to think at least $1 billion or $500 million to have a proper constellations of satellites that can cover the main trading routes that are necessary. And there's a big need of technological evolution on the transponders that can be used to push data up to the low Earth orbit satellites down to the Earth. The bandwidth is still not sufficient at this stage, and there will be some management and development R&D to do to get there. Finally, the technology that we've been developing a lot in the last 3-4 years is the hollow core fiber. I don't know if you're familiar with that technology, but in a nutshell, regular optical fiber is a full core of fiber with a protective sheet, and the laser is bouncing inside the fiber all along the way of it, which obviously is not ideal because the light is not going in a straight line. So hollow core fiber has always been used in medical application. So you've got the protective sheet, then you got a pipe of optical glass, and then you got air in the center of this pipe of fiber. And when you send a laser into that air, it's being guided by the optical fiber in a straight line instead of bouncing around like that. And that makes it as fast as electromagnetic wave in the air. So you got same types of latency with hollow core fiber that you have with RF technology. So we're using it in production on our network. At the moment, we use it as tails for RF technology to penetrate into the data centers. But we've been working at more long haul type applications where we can use it on tens and tens of kilometers instead of hundreds of meters. There are quite a large amount of physical challenges to overcome, but yeah, it's heading in the right direction. We have changed the way we're doing things during the pandemic, especially around the VPN connectivity and accessing the company data remotely. We used to be quite open when it comes to letting people access the data, and we've put a bit of a clamp down on that with lots of different security mechanisms, lots of different layers of security, because we felt it was a necessity. So we have provided a complete set of documents around manipulating the data, accessing the data, and what are the best practice and what's expected in order to match our regulatory obligations with the regulators, because it's let's be honest, it's a huge topic. When you read the news, you can see the amount of hacking and extortion that's happening, where people are going to get their data released if you pay bitcoins or if you pay this, if you pay that. So we don't want to be put in that position. So we have our own sets of infrastructure that make sure we always have backups of the data that are completely cold storage and cannot be accessed online, cannot be manipulated, can be tampered with, cannot be encrypted. So we're pretty much safe from a business standpoint. All it could do is give us let's say maximum 24 hours of delay before we can redeploy and resynchronize all this data to be functional. but we've put outside of our own control most of the mission critical information required to maintain the network, maintain the services available, and maintain everything. So the data that can be used or potentially tampered with are things that are not mission critical for the survival of the business. It's more day-to-day information that are needed for back office stuff.